go. Well, Paul, you're from Vermont.
Yes, from
And
Vermont,
yeah,
born and raised. Yeah.
all right. So tell us a little bit about you and your story, and tell us a little bit about puppet ministry, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Um, yeah, so I born and raised in Vermont. Like I said, I grew up in the church up in Orange, Vermont. Became a Christian when I was 8, and puppet. I I watched shows as a kid. I watched like Sesame Street, Eureka's Castle, and Sesame Street, things like that, and that's kind of where my fascination started with puppets, I guess, because they were like cartoons, but they were they were physical things that actually existed, and that kind of fascinated me from an early age. And and then I grew up. I was born in the '80s. I grew up in the '90s, so Vacation Bible School was pretty common, and there was puppets a lot. Some of the groups that came to our church used puppets, and so that I always found that really fascinating. Like these cartoonish things are in front of me, and they can talk, and they actually exist, and it was really pretty cool to watch. And then as I get older in my teens, I get to be really. I was really passionate about sharing my faith, sharing Jesus with people, but I didn't know how. I was really quiet and awkward, and didn't like really know how to just talking to people in general was pretty difficult. And then sharing something as deep as my faith was, I just didn't know how to do that. And so when I was 17, I felt called to go on this mission trip. My youth group at the time was going on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic. And I felt led to do that, to go on that trip. And when I did, we were originally going to go build a church down there, build a physical church building for people down there. But we also we're doing puppet shows too in the evening for like churches and schools and things like that. And we started rehearsing that here in Vermont before we left. And I volunteered to be one of the puppets because it seemed really cool. Like I said, I had that fascination. And I started doing it, and a lot of people in the group were like, "Wow, you're really good at this." And that's kind of where it started. And I was like, "Oh, I can use this to share my faith and share my creativity and things like that, and kind of come out of my shell." And that's where it started. And then,
Wow.
yeah, so like I said, I was 17 then. That was 2001. Um, and then, so it's like 21 years ago. Uh, and then from that point on, I started to perform at my home church kind of regularly, like once a month, I guess, or so. And then, other churches started to hear about me and asked me to perform, and it went on from there. Churches in Vermont, and I've performed for, by this point, I've probably performed for 9 different churches in 9 different states,
Wow.
um, mostly New England, but a few other ones too. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about why use puppets? What is, you certainly have a fascination with them.
Yeah.
But why would it be advantageous for churches to either start a puppet ministry or to engage puppets in sharing the gospel?
Yeah, there's a few good reasons. One of them, of course, is their puppet shows tend to be shorter. They tend to be
Mhm.
like, at least when I do them, they're like 5 or 10 minutes long. Some of them can be longer, of course, but generally speaking, they're shorter than your average sermon. And so it's kids have shorter attention spans these days, right? So um, a 5 to 10 minute puppet show with these fun looking characters talking and like joking around stuff would probably grab the attention of a kid easier than like an hour long sermon. Or, you know, and they're visual, of course. Puppets are visual. They look funny. They can be different colors. They can sound funny. They can have funny voices. And you can say things with a puppet that you might not necessarily be able to say in a sermon. You can be a little more direct with a puppet. Um, I mean, not anything inappropriate really, but if you want to
Right.
get certain messages across, it's a little easier to say. You might not be in as much trouble if you do that in a puppet show as you would if you said it in a sermon, maybe.
Right.
So they're shorter, they're visual, they're funny, and they can connect with kids in ways that a sermon might not. Um, there have been kids who've seen my puppet shows, and I hear about them quoting lines from it afterward, and some of them quote like the whole thing. I've been told. Uh, I was involved with this church years ago, and there was an autistic kid who didn't really say much, but when he saw the puppets come up, he came alive. He was very engaged with it and paid a lot of attention to it,
Right.
and seemed to be, connected with it in ways that he might not really connect with people generally. Um,
Right.
and
I think I've even seen some puppets, people that use puppets is almost like the kids will talk to the puppet where they wouldn't talk to the person. And it just
yeah,
seems like it seems like another opportunity to engage kids in conversation with, as you say, maybe they wouldn't otherwise.
absolutely. And I actually, when I was 19, I went with my dad to this Christian puppetry festival in Chicago. And one of the presenters was talking about how he was doing this puppet show for a group of kids once. And I don't remember all the details, but at one point he started using the puppet to talk to one of the kids. One of the kids stood up and started talking to it. And I don't even know if he had a stage. The performer might have been visible at that point, but the kid kept talking to the puppet like it was a real person. And
Right.
then after like a few minutes, I guess the kid started talking about all these personal issues going on in his family, like this, he was being abused and things like that. And I think it was maybe half an hour that this went on. He just kept talking about all these personal, like really deep, deep seated things that were going on in his life.
Right.
And so, I mean, I haven't had that experience personally, but apparently that can happen.
Right.
I
Yeah.
guess kids just feel more comfortable, talking to a puppet, whether or not they know it's real. I don't know, but
Right.
you know,
And kids need an outlet like that. And it's funny,
mm,
I've seen, puppets can really connect with adults too. Especially when, parents bring their kids and it gives them an opportunity to engage the child after the puppet show.
oh yeah,
So
absolutely, yeah,
I, I like that. I like that
yeah,
idea of starting conversations with our kids because of things that they've heard, say in a puppet show or some other arena.
oh yeah, absolutely. I in my books, I have books of puppet scripts. Talk about later, but I make sure to include discussion questions at the end of each one. For
Oh,
that
good
reason.
idea.
So
Good idea.
so they
Yeah.
can, because they will likely go home and ask their parents, so what did this mean? What does that mean? Why does the Bible say this, or why did God do that, or whatever. All these different things. It can open up all kinds of questions and discussions.
Good. Good. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about if a church is thinking about, starting a puppet ministry. What are some, things that you would tell them that they should think about as they're contemplating this? Because it certainly is a viable ministry that a
Oh yeah.
church could start, and it's not too costly. I mean, it probably will cost a little bit, but it depends on how they start out, right?
Right. It depends on what you have available to you. It depends on resources and where you are and what you have and that kind of thing. Depends, who's in how big your church is. If you feel led to start puppet ministry, obviously, of course, pray about it. It's obviously important part. But then, if uh, talk to your pastor or someone in your church, try to find other people in your church who are interested or who might be interested, of all ages, adults and kids. They could all be. The church I'm going to now, we have a woman who is older than me, and we have a kid who is I guess still elementary or middle school age maybe, who's interested in performing with us. So, different ages can be interested. You never know, until you ask. So, and if you can't find anyone right off, then just start doing it by yourself. I performed solo for a long time, and I mean, I've had people help me, and I still have. And it's, my former pastor helps me, like, performs with me quite often. Um, so yeah, I would say, do what you can with what you have around you. Basically, find people, and Facebook groups. You can find Facebook groups where connect with other puppeteers. There's a list of them right there. Puppet ministry, puppet makers. If you want to find people to make puppets for you, um, people, anything you can think of related to puppetry really is on there. It's on those groups, I'm sure.
And we'll be sure to send out a resource sheet, so don't feel like you have to write all of it down, but we'll send you a list of these, as well as I want to make sure that, people get your website and stuff like that, because you really have put out some really good resources for churches to use, if they're starting a puppet ministry.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about your resources.
So a few years ago, I started writing. I guess I kind of felt led to start writing books of puppet scripts for different books of the Bible. I started with Genesis, and I've done, so far I've done Genesis, Exodus, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, and I'm just finishing First and Second Samuel. I'm planning to write books of scripts for like most of the Bible up through like the Gospels and Acts. That's my plan. So that's my website right there, LTB Puppets. That LTB stands for Let There Be Puppets.
I wondered what that meant.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I was trying to
yeah,
figure that out. I couldn't quite figure that. Let there be puppets,
yeah,
LTB.
yeah,
Okay. Okay, good. That's clever.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And one of the things I was very, we talked before we got on tonight, and so the books. So for example, the book that you've written of scripts for Genesis is over 300 pages.
it's just around 300. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's just around 300. Yeah.
And so how many scripts do you think are in there? Because you said you've written almost a script for every single story in the book of Genesis, right?
I tried to cover just about every one. There might be one or two that I missed or left out, but I tried to include just about every one. Um,
Wow.
even the more obscure ones. I mean, obviously things like Adam and Eve and those are in there, of course, but
Right.
I try to include all the other ones.
That's awesome. That is
So
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. So
I
for
I don't know
example,
how many exactly, but
yeah. So for example, if a church, so these books that you have, and again, we'll send this to you if you, want to think about starting a puppet ministry. But I would say, some great groups in your church is certainly your youth group. If you're a Sunday school teacher, or a small group kids ministry teacher, that you might think about adding puppet ministry or puppets to your ministry, and you could grow a puppet ministry out of that maybe.
yeah, and even if you don't have puppets but you have a drama team, they could work probably just as well for that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
just in case anybody's wondering,
yeah.
uh, depending
So
on what you have.
so talk a little bit about the puppets themselves, because there's all sorts of different kinds of puppets you can either purchase or even I mean, I would say to churches that put it out there, because there may be churches who have had a ministry and they're not using all their puppets, and would be willing to give a church a puppet or two that they could start with. So I think there are resources out there. So if you were interested in starting a puppet ministry, even let me know, and I'll put it on a couple of our Facebook groups. And maybe there are churches in New England that have puppets that, if you want to start a ministry, we'd be happy to, see if we can find you some puppets for free out there. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's certainly options. And what I was going to say, so Paul, tell us a little bit how they would go about, getting your book.
So okay, yeah. So my website, of course, is right there, and so the books are all on there. They're on Amazon, and the book is connected to the Amazon links, and has all my contact information is here. Um, it's paulcreed@aol.com. It's my email address, and I have my books, and I'm also available I can write customized puppet scripts. So if you want me to write about, if you want to perform about a certain topic that is not in my books, like if it's not a Bible story, but if it's like anything I haven't written about, basically that's biblical, related to Christianity, then I can write a script for that topic for you to perform, as long or as short as you want it to be. And you can. I would ask you how many puppets you're using, how many puppeteers you have. The age group of the audience, like what age the kids are, if there are adults there too, that sort of thing.
Okay. Cool.
All those details.
Yep.
Um,
And then the other option would be to book a show if they're interested in booking a show. And so what we talked about earlier is that, so as you said, your shows are, the time frame for each of the skits, the skits of the show are like 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And so what you would do is do 2 small puppet things at the beginning and the end, and then put some
generally.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, generally, I my shows are generally 5 to 10 minutes long. Obviously, I need to rest my arm, and of course, I don't want kids to get too bored by dragging something out. But I try to. If someone wants me to do something longer, I usually do like two or sometimes 3 shorter show, like 5 or 10 minute skits, and then have games or something in between to break things up, just to keep their attention span going and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And anybody who works with kids know that a kid's attention span is 1 minute for every year that they are. So if you have a child that's 2, they can only probably sit for 2 minutes. So if you
Is that true? I didn't know that.
That is true. And
Wow.
and so I'm 61 years old. So I can only sit for 1 hour, and then I have to get up. I just telling you. So anyway, but really that is true for kids, that, if you're thinking about doing a lesson or something like that, just make sure that your activities, you break them up into those intervals of their ages, because again, and you can repeat them. Like if you have a 2-year-old and you repeat the same game a few times during the class, that's okay, but you need to break it up with other things, because again, their attention span's only going to be for 2 minutes. So I taught some preschoolers a couple of weeks ago, and one was 4 years old, and the other little gal, she was 5, and probably about 4 to 5 minutes I had to change up activities. So it'd be the same thing with a a puppet show. You'd really need to break it up. So think about that. If you're, certainly interested in having Paul come, think about your whole event and putting him in there in strategic ways so that you can engage kids. So, and again, that if you do get the evangelism grant, that pretty much you could have Paul come and take care of all his expenses, except probably for gas, because you're certainly, but if you're interested in having Paul, it's paulcreed@aol.com. I see I didn't put the @aol.com, but if you're interested in, and I'll put that in the chat box as we go along here. So anyway, anybody in the audience have some questions? Or do you have any questions for George? George might want to come back and he'd be happy to answer your questions. So, that's what we're all about here. If you have questions about Paul's ministry or something for George. I'd like to hear. So George told us he liked fried squirrel. Is there any other foods that he likes to eat
Oh,
that he can tell us about?
oh gosh, fried squirrel.
Not what he
Wait,
told me. I
well,
heard that, George.
fried squirrel. You know that's a delicacy down here, down in the South. You know, down in Mobile, all around the trailer parks. It's one of the favorites down here. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And you know, grilled porcupine. That's another one too. Grilled porcupine, and you know that doubles as a toothpick when you're done. You know what I'm saying? It's really handy. Yes, sir, Bob.
Yeah, I can see you need the pork. I would need the pick there, wouldn't you, George? Huh?
Oh well, yeah. You know you gotta take.
Yeah,
You know, dental care is important down south, as you can see.
I bet. I bet. Can you tell us your favorite Bible story, George?
Oh my favorite Bible. Oh my, that's a good one. Well, let's see. My favorite Bible story. Um, well, you know, there's Noah's Ark. You know, that's a classic. You know, on the you got every animal in the world on one boat, and you know, if I were Noah, of course, I would have more than two just in case I get hungry. You know,
Oh, there you
just
go.
you need to be resourceful, Miss Sandy. You know what I mean? You can't just eat plants and vegetables for a whole year. I mean, goodness sakes. Along with the motion sickness and seasickness, I mean, that would just I don't know if I could handle that. You know what I'm saying? Ah, man, that's torture right there.
I bet. I bet. I bet. Especially if the boat ride is a little rough, huh, George?
Yeah, I think it may have started out pretty rough from what I read. You know, it may have been smooth sailing for a few months hereafter, but
I
that
bet.
beginning, you know, I think yeah, I think it didn't have the didn't have the best takeoff at the beginning there.
I bet. I
Yeah.
bet. All right. All right. How about George? Somebody wants to know, do you have a favorite Bible song
Favorite Bible song.
you like to
Um,
sing?
hmm, favorite Bible song. That's a good question. Uh, and they went on in the ark two by two. That's a good one with the bunny rabbits
All
and
right.
you know the bunny ears. You know what we learned in Sunday school, Miss Sandy,
Uh-huh.
with the bunny ears that go on two by two. That's all I know. But I can't. I imagine there's a lot of rabbits by the end of that their boat trip. You know what I mean? This the way nature is. I'm sure. Anyway. Um, well, that's one of my favorite songs from when I was a youngin', way back
Okay.
when.
Yeah. 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 Well, there you go. Well, maybe if somebody has you come to talk about Noah's Ark, you can actually uh, brush up on that song and maybe teach it to the kids, huh?
Oh, well, sure, I'd love to do that. That'd be great. That'd be wonderful.
There you
I'd love to
go.
do that.
All right. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, there's a question for Paul, and they want to know if there's a special skill set that you need to start a puppet ministry. What would you say?
Well, what would you say? Special skill set. Good question. Um, boy, I don't know. Well, lip sync, of course. Um, lip sync, upper body strength.
Yeah.
And you can actually you can find videos on YouTube and things like that. Of like how to learn that. There's you can
Oh,
find
okay. So there's
yeah
some stuff on YouTube. Okay.
yeah you can find some Jim Henson videos. He did a tutorial. He did some tutorials about that kind of stuff,
Okay.
about lip sync and things like that. Upper body strength, like I said. Obviously, your arms get tired after a while, and
But it,
hand eye coordination.
yeah.
Sorry, because
Yep.
you know you want to see what the puppet's doing. You know, you
Yep.
can't just hold him up. You have to see what he's doing, how he's reacting, who he's looking at. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All those things.
And you've got to be able to have the time to practice, because I think the hand-eye coordination that'll take, you can learn that with some time if you practice, would you
Yeah.
say? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can
And
learn.
how about and people in drama is good. I really appreciate your point where you sound like you're an introvert. So
Yeah,
even
very much.
so really, that is a really, to me, would be a good outlet for people that are, that are introverted, because they're not the one that's right up in front, but
Right.
and they would have a script. It's not like anything they have to ad lib, although I'm sure sometimes you do ad lib with
Oh
your
yeah.
other partners, but for the most part, you have a good script that you go by. So I think it's, people don't have to be scared about, having to learn lines or anything like that.
That's yeah. That's a good point. I usually use a cheat. I mean, I do ad lib sometimes, but
Right.
um, I write out the script, and I have, the nice thing about being behind the stage, you can tape the whole script right in front
Right.
of you,
Right. I've seen that.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, somebody asks, is it true that some puppets scare small kids? Would you
Um,
recommend any particular kind of puppet for small kids, teens, and adults? Is there, um, I mean,
yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, you, I guess it kind of depends on what you do with, like, what voice you use and things like that. But it's hard to say what's going to scare a kid. I mean, when I was a kid, ET terrified me as a kid, but I don't think any of my friends were. So I don't know. Um,
so there
I
isn't
guess if
any.
it, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't, as far as I know, I don't think any of mine have scared any kids, but it's, you really can't tell. Um,
Well, I think the point you make about the voice, it depends on the voice. I think the content of the puppet skit too would be,
right.
if they're, and again, I think that's a good reason to understand your audience,
Mhm.
the age of the kids. Because if you're going to do for preschoolers, that would be, so you do something for preschoolers a little differently than you would for, the older kids. And probably for preschoolers, you'd probably want to get down on a little lower level and a
Right.
smaller stage if it's just for preschoolers. So,
And actually, at that age, the younger they are, the more visual, because at that age, they're not going to get jokes necessarily. It's all going to be visual for them. So I would say probably be more aware if they're that young, make sure just of the visual and the voice and everything, because that's what's going to stick with them. It's not going to be the jokes or the gags or whatever.
right.
I guess that's probably the age you could tell what would scare them or set them off or something.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
that is a good question. Think about that. If you're going to start a ministry, you may want to, think about the content of what you would be doing. And the other thing I would say, don't try to make up your own skits, because you already have some scripts. And I think, Paul, you said the books are about $20 on Amazon. I mean, that's 300 pages of scripts. I don't know how many scripts are there, but
I think they're all about some of them are longer. I think Noah's Ark is like 14 pages.
okay.
I got
Yeah.
carried away with some animal jokes,
Okay.
um, but most of them are like probably 3 to 5 pages or something like that, or maybe a little longer. It depends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they're all Genesis is $20. I think most of the other ones are probably $10 to $15, maybe.
okay.
Some of them are shorter than the other ones, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And you can start off with puppets like, you could get some good heavy cardstock and have the kids start working with, figures on those tongue depressor things. And I mean, and I think if you find that there's, interest, then you can, maybe buy a real puppet, you know? I think that's the way you find out if the puppet ministry might be for you. Start off with some other things that you have, because you've already said that, use what you have, right?
right, use what you have. And yeah, people have made them for me. George was a gift that a pastor gave me about 17 years ago. So people have bought them for me and given them to me. I've had them custom made from people I found on Facebook.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Yeah. So people are asking, how many puppets do you work with besides Mr. George?
there's probably five or probably about a handful or so that I use on a regular basis. George is I probably use George the most because he's the most fun to write for and to voice and all that kind of stuff. He's the easiest to like do improv with because he's just so absurd sometimes, it just makes it easier to ad lib with
So
him.
and so people are wondering, so how do you find the voice? How did that work for you and George? I mean, you had to
Yeah,
discover his voice, so you probably the other ones too.
voices, that's I think with George it was pretty easy. It's if I have a visual it helps. If I mean I just George seemed like a Southern person to me, and that's how I started, and then it kind of grew from there.
Okay.
Um, yeah, having a visual helps too. Some of them start off as one thing and then they kind of turn into this other thing over time. Like I have a character, Max, who kind of started out as this dry monotone kind of voice, and he turned into this really serious, uptight, kind of legalistic guy who you know, doesn't he's just always very serious about everything.
Okay.
He That's like kind of how he turned out over the years. Um,
And George is
George
not bad.
George is the opposite kind of George. Yeah,
So he's the happy-go-lucky type of
he's
George.
happy-go-lucky. He's kind of in his own world. He's well-intentioned and tries to be a good Christian, everything, but
Yeah.
kind of has his own interpretation of things sometimes, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
Somebody says here, George is an alter ego,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is true. I mean, you're the
yeah.
puppeteer. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, George came out of you. So, you needed a
Right.
happy-go-lucky. And then, of course,
Mhm.
Max, probably you needed somebody pretty serious. So you
Ma-
kind of got the both in there, huh?
I think Max is where I channel all my neurosis and all that kind of stuff through.
I
That's why he's
gotcha.
so serious. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's
All
been really
right.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah, these are great questions. This is good questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, if you really want to start a puppet ministry, this is an awesome way for kids to find their voice. I mean, you may have some kids in your classes or in your church that, haven't found a way to serve yet, but you know what? This could be, an opportunity, especially if you have some older kids that like to cut up and all that type of stuff, and you could channel it into some puppets. They could make awesome, an awesome puppet team to come in and share with the younger kids. And again, like I said, they don't even have to, make scripts, because if they purchase a couple of your books, I mean,
Mhm.
they're pretty affordable. You'd have a ministry going. So, check that out. And again, like I said, if you're interested in starting a ministry, and we can help at the BCNE by sharing that on our Facebook page. You never know. There may be a church that has some puppets that they haven't used for a while, but they would love to find a new home for them. So, you can certainly reach out to me and let me know. So again, Paul, I put your contact information there in the chat. Paul C. Reed at AOL.com if you want to reach out to him about a show, or if you want to reach out to him to, to get some more information. And also, you'd certainly be willing to do maybe a Zoom call if, they're interested in doing some more. So somebody says, I have shy high school girls that help me with puppets every year during VBS. So their personalities are bold when they're behind a curtain. There you
Yeah.
go. I
Yeah.
like that, Jolene. Isn't that the truth, huh?
Absolutely.
But,
Yeah.
and wouldn't it be awesome? I mean, I don't know about their Jolene, but, maybe, people that find that as an outlet for Vacation Bible School, and it could grow into something more. So, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. Now, Jolene, tell us, where do you get your puppets? Do you have some good puppets, or do they make them? How do you get puppets? Because I love that idea. A lot of our
Yeah.
churches are starting Vacation Bible School, and this may be an opportunity for them to, they could talk to you about So they've had some donated, very, very nice, some rough. So, you know, there are opportunities out there for churches to get some puppets. So cool, cool. All right. Any other questions out there? Any other questions? We, you know, we don't want to belabor. And again, those of you that are, you know, in the New England area and want to have Paul perhaps come, and it doesn't have to be this summer, you know, can think about something for the fall. Some churches may be thinking about, you know, they're having Vacation Bible School, and some of you were on with me a couple of weeks ago when I talked about follow-up and how important it is to have a follow-up event started. And so you may want to be thinking about how, you know, what you could do come the fall. So that might be a good thing. So how long is his performance? So he shared already that his performances are usually 5 to 7 minutes, and then he probably plays some games in between, and then maybe another 5 to 7 minutes at the end. So only because of the age of the kids, and you know they're not going to sit for a whole half an hour and watch a puppet show. So it would be broken up into different things, but he would customize. You'd be certainly willing to customize what would work for a different church, and you know, have a meeting of the minds on that. So certainly reach out to Paul at paulcreed@aol.com, and he'll answer your questions about that. So good question. Thank you. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, let me know. I'm going to tell you about some stuff coming up. Some of you, if you want to get a hold of me, you can see on the screen there, scoello@bcne.net. And all of our evangelism webinars, you can find at bcne.net/evangelism webinars, which is where you'll find all of them listed, and you can pick and choose the ones you want to be at. How do you incorporate the discussion questions as part of your show? So would you do that, Paul, or would you have somebody like moderate? Like tonight, I was kind of going back and forth with George. Would you have somebody that might work with you to help moderate discussion questions during the show? How do you think that would work?
Yeah, usually typically I will, you know, whoever is teaching Sunday school or the pastor or whoever is doing it, they will usually take up that part. Like at VBS, I've performed, and then one of the VBS leaders will like talk to the kids about it after and ask them questions. And like I said before, in my books, I add discussion questions at the end of each script, you know, so you can generate conversation that way with the kids after each show. I don't typically have the puppets ask the questions at the end, but you know, I usually, like I said, leave that up to whoever's teaching the lesson. But I mean, of course I could if they want me to.
Yeah, but that's it's actually better to have somebody at the church. So if you're going to do a puppet show, and you know, you're going to transition into a game time, maybe before that, you know, whoever the moderator is or the teacher that works with the kids, because that person knows them better, they can engage the discussion questions with the kids. Well, you know, you're getting ready to transition into a game type of thing or whatever. So, and I've seen that before. You know, you have like a host in front of the, you know, in front of the stage or in front of the curtain, and they kind of interact with the puppets, and then after, you know, you're done, they would then interact with the audience. So that's probably how you'd want to you know, incorporate that. But I love the idea that you already have those discussion questions ready for them. So that's always